Hello, I'm Paul Ndiho. This week on the Africa Innovation and Technology Channel, the first ever US-Africa Leaders Summit that took place here in Washington. Every week we strive to bring you stories that inspire, empower, engage, and motivate young African innovators using new technology into action. Africa analysts wonder whether this event may be the beginning of a new narrative, changing perceptions in the US-Africa relations. Seeking to strengthen America's financial foothold in Africa, US President Barack Obama announced $33 billion in commitments this week aimed at shifting US ties with Africa beyond humanitarian aid and more towards eco-economic partnerships. The money will be spent to develop clean energy, improve infrastructure, and help financial institutions and other sectors. US President Barack Obama opened the three-day Africa Leaders Summit in Washington. Obama discussed Africa's important role in the world. He said that a new Africa is emerging, with some of the world's fastest growing economies, a growing middle class, and the youngest and fastest growing population on Earth. He said Africa will help shape the world as never before.
We want to partner with Africa to build the infrastructure that economies need to flourish. And that starts with electricity, which most Africans still lack. And that's why last year, while traveling throughout the continent, I announced a bold initiative, Power Africa, to double access to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa and help bring electricity to more than 20 million African homes and businesses.
This summit focused on trade and investment to forge what President Barack Obama sees as a new relationship with Africa.
I think that the narrative in Africa is changing, and we believe that America should be looking towards Africa. It's a good place to invest.
The President's Power Africa initiative pledged to double electricity in sub-Saharan Africa, and US-run programs aim to lift more than 50 million people out of poverty.
On top of the significant resources we've already committed, I'm announcing that the United States will increase our pledge to $300 million a year for this effort. And as of today, including an additional $12 billion in new commitments being announced this week by our private sector partners and the World Bank and the government of Sweden, we've now mobilized a total of more than $26 billion to Power Africa.
The presidents urged the United States to renew a 2000 trade agreement, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, commonly known as AGOA, when it expires next year.
I want to start off by thanking President Obama and the administration of the United States for providing the opportunity for this summit that brings together the United States and Africa to forge the kind of partnership that is very essential and crucial to developments, especially in Africa, but also globally.
On the second day of the US-Africa Leaders Summit held here in Washington, former US President Bill Clinton led a panel discussion on business development in Africa. Later on, President Obama hosted the visiting African leaders for dinner at the White House.
Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda, and Mrs. Janet Museveni, First Lady of the Republic of Uganda.
Obama and about 40 African heads of state met all day Wednesday, touching on a wide range of issues including regional security and corruption, two areas the U.S. administration says are holding back growth and investment in Africa. Mr. Obama said that Africa will help shape the world as never before and added a new generation of young Africans was making its voices heard. The continent is home to 6 of the world's fastest growing economies and a rapidly expanding middle class with increased spending power. And the continent's population is expected to double by 2050. Let's start by talking about the Africa Business Summit. Let me get your assessment of what's going on around town. You have almost 50 African leaders in town. What's your assessment?
So far, I mean, it's a fantastic opportunity for African business leaders as well as the African political leaders to come over here and build and bridge relationships with the United States and with American companies.
We're here to venture with the American businessmen and to welcome America into Africa, especially Tanzania. Now that there's a big boom out there, a lot of economically we advance, a lot of opportunities out there. So that's why we're here to venture and partner with potential new companies.
Let me ask you a little bit about the Africa Leaders Summit that is taking place here in Washington.
Okay.
What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's actually been quite wonderful. Yesterday I attended the Civil Society Forum that was held at State Department, and President Kikwete and President Mbamba was there, and they were taking direct questions from civil society. There were no prepared speeches, which I thought was nice, so it was about 2 hours with those presidents and Secretary Kerry just really hearing from the civil society. So that was very impressive actually to me. And then today I thought that this program went really well. So I'm actually quite happy with the forum so far.
UBA is the only Nigerian financial institution with a presence in America. And one of the primary focus we have as a business is to intermediate between American investors looking to do business in Africa. UBA is present in 19 African countries, including Nigeria. And given the focus of this forum, it was expedient for us to be here.
What are your thoughts about the Africa Leaders Summit here taking place here in the United States?
The African Summit is a great opportunity because my experience of the Americans is they have very negative attitude towards Africa. Maybe it's a risky place, it's war-torn, it's poor nutrition and all this. But by their presence here, it has changed the image of Africa towards the Americans. As you can see, today is doing business in Tanzania. There's a lot of people which at least they are going to be our ambassadors. So the summit is a testimony that that Africa is a safe place to invest. Africa is an emerging economy. Africa is the fastest growing economy. This would not have been known if the summit would not have taken place here.
Let's talk about the Africa Leaders Summit taking place here in Washington.
Yeah.
Your assessment?
I think it is wonderful. It is bringing together potential investors and companies with African ministers and companies based in Africa. It is really bringing an immediacy to the need for Americans to go to Africa and to invest. There are other countries that have been in Africa for some time. We keep hearing about the Chinese. It's long past time that the Americans participate.
We'll take a short break, but before we go, we want to know what you think about the Africa Innovation and Technology channel and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Twitter and Facebook. The address is Africa Innovations and Technology. You can also check us out at our website at www.africainnovations.net. Coming up right here on the Africa Innovation and Technology channel, we'll take a closer look at President Barack Obama's Power Africa initiative and the need for Americans to invest in the power sector in Africa. Welcome back to the Africa Innovation and Technology channel, a show where we strive to bring you stories that inspire, empower, engage, and motivate young African innovators using new technology into action. Today, we are talking about the just concluded first ever US Leaders Summit that took place here in Washington, D.C. The overreaching themes of this year's Africa Leaders Summit are focused on the need to invest in the power sector for Africa to realize its growth potential, the greater energy deficits that currently exist on the continent and the corresponding business opportunities, and the need for global local partnerships to support the innovation that is swelling exponentially throughout Africa. Observers say Africa's renewable energy potential will also be an important part of the solution. This potential for distributed power in the continent hasn't gone unnoticed. Large companies such as General Electric are entering the market. As part of President Barack Obama's Power Africa initiative, GE is already doing multi-billion-dollar projects in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and Tanzania. More than 2/3 of the population of sub-Saharan Africa is without electricity, and more than 80% of those living in rural areas lack access to power. The Power Africa initiative is expected to build on Africa's enormous power potential, including new discoveries of vast reserves of oil and gas. Africa also has the potential to develop a clean geothermal, hydro, wind and solar energy. Andrew Haskowitz, the U.S. coordinator for Power Africa, says that life is extremely difficult without power.
Power is essential for any society, Africa, United States, anywhere. We take it for granted. But if you don't have power, children can't study at night, health clinics can't provide essential services, life-saving equipment can't operate, companies can't compete when they have to run on expensive diesel generators. So when you look at all the constraints to growth in Africa and developing world, they must always come back to power.
President Barack Obama's Power Africa initiative is aiming to expand electricity access to at least 60 million households and businesses. Speaking to African and business leaders at the U.S. Africa Business Forum, President Obama said he wants to capitalize on new opportunities on the continent.
We want to partner with Africa to build the infrastructure that economies need to flourish. And that starts with electricity, which most Africans still lack. And that's why last year, while traveling throughout the continent, I announced a bold initiative, Power Africa, to double access to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa and help bring electricity to more than 20 million African homes and businesses.
Tom Cogan, a regional program director for African Development Foundation, says that the organization is partnering with General Electric and USAID in 6 African countries.
We're funding off-grid energy projects that are funding both business-related projects, but also schools and other facilities. So it could be solar, it could be wind-powered, it could be microhydro, it could be biogas, so people can have access to electricity when they're not connected to the grid.
The World Bank forecasts Africa's economic growth will accelerate at more than 5% in 2015 and 2016, but estimates that 1 in 3 Africans, or 600 million people, need electricity. Internationally known hip-hop and R&B artist Akon is also doing his part to Power Africa. His initiative, Akon Lighting Africa project, is striving to bring electricity to more than 1 million households in Africa by the end of this year.
We wanted to be able to put ourselves in a position to get to the people, because ultimately the people of Africa have to do it. And me being African, I'm part of the people, so I wanted to be in a position where I create an initiative to where no matter where and how or what face that you may be able to be facing, there's a way to make it work. And me coming from the entertainment system, coming into energy and never knew nothing about energy, to create opportunities like this shows that anyone can actually do it.
The U.S. is hardly alone in visualizing Africa's economic potential. China, India, and Europe are moving aggressively to tap into the continent's growing markets. The Asian nation is eager to develop the roads, bridges, and ports needed to build Africa's infrastructure. You talked about some of the kids, some of the challenges some of the young kids face over there. And in fact, you mentioned that at one point you're one of those kids. How much of the difference do you think you can make on the ground?
Oh, I think me as well as other people can make a huge difference. It only starts with one person. Then everyone is influenced certainly after. Me being an artist and having the notoriety around the world, I think helps to influence the younger kids in Africa to actually start now and not wait till later. I think the key is to start with the younger generation, educate them on how these things are, the problems that we're facing now. So that way, even as they're moving on in their education, they can start taking certain movements towards creating whatever that solution is for their future. And I think that's the goal.
How much money are you looking at investing into this project?
I mean, whatever it's going to take at this point, because I know at the end of the day, it's a bigger play. Whenever you're doing something that's that people need, it's natural that you're going to make good money from it. And ultimately, how you take that money and dispense it back into the community is how it all works out.
And how many countries are you into right now?
Right now, we're in 14 countries, and after tomorrow, we'll be in 15.
What's the 15th?
Because we're closing another one today.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Any message for young people in Africa who look up to you?
No, absolutely. I mean, you know, Africa is your country. The message I would have for them is that you have to build it. We can't constantly just depend on the neighbors or foreign aid to come and help. When you're actually on the grounds, you see the problem, you understand what it is. So let's educate ourselves to how do we fix our country to where we can live in it comfortably and allow our children to be able to take it over.
Mr. Akon, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're also very, very interested in Power Africa. We're a lead partner in Power Africa, and we've been involved in promoting Power Africa in Nigeria. Well, it's one of the main initiatives of President Obama, and it's a very laudable objective to double capacity in Africa generally. It started off with some target countries, and today we've just heard that it's going to be expanded across Africa, and there'll be, Power Africa is now going to be looking at the entire Africa.
We're here basically to look back at 1 year of Power Africa and what we've accomplished over the last year. We launched our annual report. We got together with leaders from all over the continent to talk about how Power Africa, despite the fact that we started in 6 focus countries, we're really looking to expand and provide services to countries all over the continent, depending on what resources we may get in the future. But we've been taking an evaluation of our model and seeing what we've accomplished and what we've learned, and we've been sharing some of those lessons. Power is essential for any society, Africa, United States, anywhere. We take it for granted, but if you don't have power, children can't study at night, health clinics can't provide essential services, life-saving equipment can't operate, companies can't compete when they have to run on expensive diesel generators. So when you look at all the constraints to growth in Africa and developing world, they must always come back to power, even if it comes down to developing clean water. So having power is what both empowers people to take control of their own lives, but it also helps the economy grow.
Well, on that note, do you think you have a better idea, or you have created something that everyone is talking about and you'd like to be featured on this show? Please send us your video clips and tell us which country you're from and how your innovation is impacting your community. That's our show today. Be sure to watch the Africa Innovation and Technology channel online every weekend and on our website at www.africainnovations.net. Thanks for watching.